of Krishna, who sits within the heart of all living entities. And he's realized through meditation, and then who cultivate knowledge. What is that knowledge? They cultivate knowledge of everything that is material, and beyond that there is the element of existence that is not material, and that is the soul. But beyond the soul there is the Supreme Soul, who is the source of both the soul and the material existence. So through various philosophical speculations, using shastras and eliminating everything that is material, they come to the stage of understanding that ultimately existence is spiritual, and it is a person, and that person sits within the heart. And he is called Antaryami, the manifestation of Krishna within the hearts of all living entities. And there's others who try to understand him by working for, in other words, they're the karma yogis, or the jnana yogis, both of them, combination of, not a complete karma yogi, but a karma yogi who is cultivating philosophical knowledge at the same time and detaching themselves from trying to enjoy the results of their activities. In other words, they give their activities in offering devotion to the Lord. So all of these persons try to understand the second stage of God realization, which is, and Prabhupada made the nice comparisons. He said when you see the sun is in one place, but the sun's energy is everywhere in creation. But then there is the sun god, who is the source, who is the manager of the sun. So the third stage of realization, which is Bhagavan realization, which is the complete stage of realization, is what the devotees aspire for, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by performing activities for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, cultivating the knowledge of their relationship with the Supreme Lord and being detached from all the results of their activities. So devotees are inclusive of all of the activities of the previous types of yogis, jnanis, karmis, and various types of tapasis who try to realize the absolute truth through prayer, meditations, and service. But the devotees go directly to the principle is that they try to please the Lord by their activities and dedicate their activities to the service of the Lord, and by glorifying the Lord and detaching themselves completely from all material activities. This awakens their relationship with the Lord when it says that when the Lord is pleased, He reveals Himself to the devotee in His personal form as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the complete process. So here we're hearing about the second stage here. And Sankhya Yogi is also mentioned here. And Sankhya Yogi is one who eliminates by discriminating between the different manifestations which make up the material elements, which are the mind, the senses, intelligence, the 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge-inquiring senses, the objects of the senses, and ultimately the soul, who is surrounded by all these elements but not touched by these elements, and then also the source of that. And as Prabhupada says, the soul is the 25th element, and the Supreme Lord is the 26th element. So Kapila Dev, in the 3rd canto Srimad Bhagavatam, he teaches Sankhya Yoga based on devotion to the Supreme Lord. There's another type of person who also teaches Sankhya Yoga. His name is also Kapila, but he's an atheist. Prabhupada talks about him, that he teaches also a form of Sankhya Yoga, but the ultimate goal is that there is no soul, or there's no God, actually. And therefore the whole material world is simply a combination of different elements in different forms. And when you get beyond all of that, then you have realized yourself as different from everything. And then you can enjoy without getting without getting captured by the material element. In other words, you become the controller of the material elements. So that atheist, so he's also named as Kapila also. So many of the scientists today, they also adhere to his philosophy of atheism. But we follow the devotional Kapila, who is actually an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the goal ultimately is God realization. So here, I'm mentioning that understanding that the Lord within the heart of all living entities. Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavihastani, Suni Chaiva Swapakeja, Pandita Samadarshanaha. So one who is on that level of self-realization sees, although he sees the different bodies, he also knows that within that body is the pure soul, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul. And therefore, he doesn't make discriminations based on the body for interaction. He interacts with everyone as a spiritual being. And therefore he's on the platform of what is called pure knowledge. When you see everything different, then the Supreme Lord, but everything working under the control of the Lord simultaneously. This is very philosophical, but devotees don't have to worry about all this. We just chant Hare Krishna. because by chanting Hare Krishna, we purify our consciousness. Chanting Hare Krishna includes all the different levels of realization prior to the Bhagavan realization. In other words, through chanting Hare Krishna, one can realize themselves as being non-different than the spiritual essence. In other words, realizing ourselves as being different from everything material. And coming to the next stage, understanding that within the heart of all living beings, God is sitting there in directing the living entity accordingly. So the Super Soul is manifested for the devotees in Krishna consciousness as the spiritual master. The spiritual master is the external manifestation of the Super Soul, who is teaching exactly what the Super Soul is speaking to us within the heart. When one comes to Super Soul realization, one can hear Krishna within the heart, because Krishna within the heart and Krishna externally manifested as the spiritual master are saying the same thing, like that. So that's why as one follows the instructions of their spiritual master and engages wholeheartedly in devotional service, one comes to the platform of freedom from the dualities of material energy, and that's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Once one transcends those dualities of material nature, then one can understand that one can hear the Super Soul within the heart. And what is the Super Soul? He's simply directing his friend, the individual soul, towards him by encouraging him in the process of loving devotional service, which the spiritual master does the same thing. So by expertly hearing from and following the instructions of the spiritual master, therefore one can take shelter of the spiritual master in the form of his instructions that are coming exactly from the Lord in the heart. So advanced devotees don't have to hear regularly from their spiritual master because they have realized everything in their process of spiritual life, and therefore they're hearing from Krishna in the heart, like that. And Krishna is also teaching each and every one of us, even those who are not on the level of Super Soul realization, in the heart, and he's telling us exactly what we should be doing at every moment. And some people can hear and others cannot hear. So what makes one different between one can hear and one cannot hear is the force of one's material desires. When one gets rid of all material desires, then the voice of the Super Soul becomes easy to hear. And Krishna is constantly directing that living entity towards him by giving him relevant instructions in devotional service. Well, therefore, the devotees is constantly in contact with the Lord within the heart and executing their devotional service. And that is the second form of self-realization. As that matures, one starts to realize Krishna in his transcendental form as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who manifests himself in his different forms as Krishna, Govinda, and all of the different manifestations of Krishna in his personal forms. And then one serves the personal forms in the mood of loving devotional service. So this is the process. And Prabhupada wants to give a little, he wants to chide the Hatha Yogis here. The Hatha Yogis, they think by twisting their mind and body in certain directions, sometimes we call it pretzel yoga. You twist this way and you twist that way. Well, and then you get twisted. And sometimes you get stuck and you can't get out of it. Then your wife has to come and push you so you can get unpretzeled. It's like that. So, there's a lot of, what is the benefit of Hatha Yoga is that it has to be included in what is called the Ashtanga Yoga system. Yama, Niyama, Hatha, Pranama, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dhyana, the eightfold mystic system. So Hatha is part of that. It's one of the 8 elements of the Hatha. And it has some benefit because it helps to control the mind and senses, that's all. But it doesn't give you a realization. So Prabhupada very enthusiastically wants to make it clear that in this age no one can become self-realized by Hatha Yoga because it has to be included in the Ashtanga Yoga system. And what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita regarding the Ashtanga Yoga system? It's too difficult in this age. Because the ingredients needed and the atmosphere needed to perform it has to be exactly according to prescription, and the atmosphere has to be, an atmosphere free from any material activities. You can't perform Hatha Yogas in cities. But you can perform bhakti-yoga anywhere, because bhakti-yoga means to worship the Lord and serve the Lord using one's body, mind, intelligence, senses in the service of the Lord with an idea of pleasing the Lord. And then when the Lord is pleased, He does the work. See, these other processes really depend on your own efforts. Karma yoga, jnana yoga, and various other types of Ashtanga yoga. You have to be quite expert in performing these. And if you make a little error in the whole process, then the whole thing is lost. But bhakti is different. Bhakti is simply based on the principle of love. Karma is based on the principle of work. Jnana is based on the principles of knowledge. And in order to get karma and jnana, one has to perform austerities and various types of meditations. But devotees chant, dance, and take prasad. And realize the Lord in His personal form as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is receiving the activities of our devotional service and reciprocating with the devotee by giving the devotee knowledge of himself and detaching the devotee automatically from material activities. So the devotee makes the effort and Krishna gives the results. But in these other processes, the devotee the practitioner has to do all the work. And that's why it's very faulty and very arduous. So you find very few successful jnana yogis, hatha yogis, and the various types of yoga. They perform all of these activities. They actually get to the platform of liberation. But their liberation is impersonal liberation, And then, as Lord Brahma says, Aruna Krishchena Padam Padam Padanti, they fall down, they come back to the material world and take up welfare activities in the mode of goodness, such as opening up hospitals and doing philanthropical work for people in general. And most of these yogis, they start their own herb business and they sell, some nice teas. You got hatha yoga tea and this yoga tea and yogi tea and bogi yogi tea and so you get all of these little side men. They make nice tea, but that's not the goal of yoga, to make tea. So this is what they get, and after some time of all of their austerities, then because they don't worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whatever they attain is temporary and they have to fall down again. Only because the whole principle of life is relationship. You see in this material world, a person is happy based on the quality of the relationships they have with others. Happiness is based on relationships. So the ultimate principle of existence is a relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the perfect relationship. So when we can establish ourselves in that relationship, then we have actually reached the platform of understanding what is the nature of our existence. It's to exchange loving relationships with another person, but in this case, the Supreme Person. And therefore, because it's the Supreme Person, that love is perfect. And the results of that is one no longer is affected by the material energy and goes back to Krishna at the end of this life. So, bhakti-yoga seems to be quite simple in one sense, but in another sense it's difficult because one has to dedicate themselves completely to the activities of bhakti. Bhakti cannot be divided by material activities. Bhakti has to be done constantly. Savai pum samparo dharmo. Yato bhakti ahoksaje hoituki apriyata yayatma suprasidati. Has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted. So you get to the stage of being uninterrupted when you're no longer motivated by material desires. So the motivation is first, to free oneself from any desire for fruit of gain through different activities, philosophical knowledge, and various types of successes through austerities and penances. Because by austerity, you can gain material things. Those who are expert in materials things in the material world know how to position themselves in such a way as they can profit from that austerity. They deny themselves some personal comforts, and then they get some higher situation in the material world. So austerity will get you something material, but it won't get you Krishna. Krishna is not gotten by austerity; he's only gotten by devotion. But austerity, in the simple austerity in bhakti-yoga, is the 4 regulative principles, and to every day chant 16 rounds on beads without fail, and try to cultivate the mood of attention and devotion in that practice. Eat only food that is offered to the Lord. That purifies the mind and allows the mind to practice bhakti without any deviation, and also to perform activities according to the directions of the spiritual master, who is represented by his authorities, the temple leaders, like that. If we follow that process very carefully, we actually start to become enthusiastic, because devotional service is so sweet that the devotee will not think, I just want to serve. It's so nice. Their minds are always fixed. They go from one service to another, but they're always engaged in the activities of devotional service. So if they were offered something else, some position in this material world, or some freedom from material miseries, they won't accept it, because they know devotional service cannot be compared to anything. And that's mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where he says that the happiness that one gets from impersonal liberation, if it's multiplied 1,000,000 times, is like one drop of the happiness that one can get from devotional service. Because one comes in contact with the supreme source of happiness, Krishna. Where these others, they are getting some type of happiness which is simply the relief of material suffering. So relief of material suffering looks like happiness, but ultimately it's just one step above material suffering, that's all it is. Real happiness is the soul's relationship with Krishna, and through that loving relationship when one serves the Lord by serving the devotees of the Lord, by trying to please them according to the directions given by the spiritual teachers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so any questions? Comments? Yes, I forgot your spiritual name. Akshaya, yeah. Okay. Akshaya.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Oh.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your lecture. At the beginning you were saying about how Paramatma is manifested through the instructions of a spiritual master, and with the instruction of spiritual master you go beyond the duality of material world. Now my question, my problem is like sometimes with instructions of spiritual master I can see more of duality of material world. What is wrong in this?
Well, if you can see it, that doesn't mean you are entangled in it. The devotee has vision, therefore it says the devotee can see spiritual and material side by side. But he's not interested in the material. So what it means is to go beyond that, means to get out of the entanglement of the dualities. Happiness and distress. Seeing that everything in this world has two sides. But in the spiritual, everything is absolute. In other words, Krishna's name is Krishna, Krishna's form is Krishna. Devotional service is non-different than Krishna. But in the material world, everything has one side or the other. So we have a body, and the body is not us. That's part of the duality. So if you can see it, that's good, because that is actually spiritual vision. But if you're entangled in it, then that's material. Yeah. Entangled in it means you're still trying to either get out of it, or you're still trying to enjoy it, either one. The karmis are still trying to enjoy it. The yogis are trying to get out of it, or the jnanis are trying to get out of it. The bhaktas don't care either one way or the other. They simply engage in devotional service. They lose consciousness of what's happening in the material world. They're not interesting. So if happiness comes, distress comes, they see it as simply being the features of the movements of the material world. And Prabhupada said, just like today, Prabhupada was saying, you are giving me so much comfort, and that is good, because that's what you do to your spiritual master, but still I am coughing. Prabhupada was coughing. But I know that this coughing will soon be gone, because it's part of this material world. Something like this comes, something like this goes. So the dualities of the material world are like the changing of the seasons. So now we're in the summer season, and then soon we'll be in the fall season. And then soon we'll be, instead of sitting here with our short sleeve kurtas on, we'll be putting hats and earmuffs, and they'll forget to turn on the heat here, and then everybody will start yelling at Ananta, where's the heat? So, so the material world is just full of dualities. Yeah, and the fact that you can see them doesn't mean that you are on that level. If you see them, that's good. But if you're trying to and still enjoy within those dualities, then that's the entanglement. So the instructions of the spiritual master is meant to elevate you above that. In other words, devotional service is not part of the dualities of the material world. And it's the internal energy of Krishna manifested as. Actually, Srimati Radharani she's Bhakti Devi. She's the pure spiritual energy which manifests as pure devotional service to Krishna. So when we connect with the spiritual master's instructions, he connects us with the spiritual energy simply by following those instructions. That elevates your consciousness. So the knowledge we need to do that is there in the books. Therefore we hear the books, we read the books, hear from the spiritual master, and we avoid getting entangled in the material energy. Mm-hmm. How do we avoid? The best way to avoid is stay engaged in devotional service.
Staying engaged in devotional service is also to honor a prasadam. But then you go sometimes too much of honoring the prasadam,
Well, therefore Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, one who eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough, cannot perform the yoga system. Therefore, in the next verse he says, what is that? I can't remember the Sanskrit, but the verse is, one who is temperate. He uses that word temperate. Temperate means moderate. Moderate means the middle road, not too much. One who is temperate in eating, sleeping, working, and recreation can mitigate all pains by performing the yoga system. I forgot the actual Sanskrit. But, yeah, so we have to practice the middle road, not too much, not too little. Just and that's the principle of keeping the body in shape, just what you need in order to do your service. For some it's more than others, and for others it's less, but ultimately you have to find what works for you the best, not too much, not too little. So sometimes we say, Prabhupada said a yogi will will fill the stomach up with halfway with food, 1/4 with water, and 1/4 with air, like that, for digestion. So Prabhupada gives that standard. So if we keep, stuffing it in, then we fall into the lower modes of passion and ignorance, and we become lethargic. The mind becomes clouded, and one cannot execute their devotional service nicely. Not too much, not too little. Prasadam is so nice that it's hard to do that. But
somebody needs to take all the prasadam at the end. We don't want to put nice prasadam into waste.
Prabhupada said, just, you cook enough for the devotees. If there's any left over, you give it to the guests. When they come.
Yes.
Don't think you're a guest.
Not anymore. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Nice elaborated.
Prabhupada has given all the instructions in a practical sense, because we need to know the practical application of bhakti so we don't get entangled in, doing the wrong thing. That bhakti contains a lot of these principles, how to avoid getting entrapped by the lower modes of passion and ignorance. So the mode of goodness is the mode of elevation of consciousness. And from there, when you act in the mode of goodness, and you perform devotional service, you gradually rise above the mode of goodness to the Suddha-sattva, or transcendental goodness. That means you're situated in devotional service. So one who's serious will use every moment in Krishna consciousness. There's no gaps. There's no this vacation. I work, I serve 6 days and 1 day for me. 1 day for Maya. Maya's a pure devotee, I have to give her 1 day, I'm serving a pure devotee. She's Mahamaya. A devotee thinks, how am I using my time? Am I actually serving Krishna now, or am I serving my own desires? So, therefore, we have a regulated schedule, which helps us to stay fixed in devotional service. And as we work with a regulated schedule, then we use our time, and then we can see what we're supposed to be doing at a certain time. And if we have any free time, we chant Hare Krishna. Or read some books. Or both. No gaps. Gaps means you flap. You get into the gap, you flap, and then you are zapped. Any other questions or comments? No gaps. But then, when then you say, "Oh, you're a fanatic." Yeah, we are. To be a fanatic for the right thing is good. To be a fanatic for the wrong thing is wrong. So we want as much Krishna's consciousness as we can get, because it's the best. Mukunda, question. You've been taking notes, right? Okay, anybody else? Okay. Looks like we still got 10 minutes. Anybody else make a comment? No comments, no questions. Okay. We'll stop here, chant and be happy. So, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Okay. Thank you.
This is the 17, right? Oh my God, this is scary statement. Thank you. Maybe I will come my phone. Just not today or day or day when you can stay. Just you heard right at the village. Space outside the temple is the streets. I mean, yeah, he will Maharshi have problems in many places, like Rome, and he will to visit his place. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So you remember space. Look at this memory. Good sanskar, no? Because you will travel a little bit there, maybe sometimes stay in the dance. Yeah, will be a survive. But not the whole tour, but you want to know Maharaj from the day one to the last day. So that also means private programs which you are not invited to. Yeah, I think that anyone will be there probably. Yeah, Maharasa from Korea.